I can tell within 5 minutes if someone will become a profitable trader. Over the last 10 years, I've had thousands of conversations with traders. Some have been complete beginners, some have been trading for years and struggling a little bit, and some have joined tier 1 trading. And others have stopped me after an event, after seeing me speak on stage or something, or sent me a message online. And it doesn't take very long before I get a real feel for how somebody is approaching trading. Now, before I go any further, let me say something. I can't predict who's going to become profitable. Nobody can do that, right? At least no one I've met. I've been surprised plenty of times, actually. People who I've expected to do badly or really struggle actually have done brilliantly. And people that I thought that had every advantage that they could possibly have quietly disappeared. So this isn't me claiming that I can see the future. It's simply what I've observed after spending a decade around traders. Certain behaviors seem to appear again and again in the people who eventually make it. And certain behaviors seem to make the journey much, much harder than it needs to be. So today, I want to walk you through those observations. And as we're going through them, don't think about somebody else, think about yourself. Because if one of these things sound familiar, you've probably found something worth working on. So the very first thing that I notice isn't the strategy that they're trading, it's the questions they're asking. So somebody will say, Jason, what's the best strategy? Or what's your favorite indicator or favorite strategy? Or what time frame should I trade? And they're perfectly normal questions. In fact, I asked exactly the same sort of questions when I started, but after hearing them thousands of times, I've noticed something. The traders who eventually become consistent stop asking those questions quite early on. Their questions change. They'll ask things like, how do I know if a strategy actually has an edge? Or how many trades should I backtest before I trust the results? What would make the strategy stop working? So they're not looking for someone else's answer. They're trying to understand the process. And trading is a process. The strategy matters, of course it does, but the questions you ask me tell me far more about where you are than the strategy you're trading. The next thing I notice for or listen is for if someone talks about losing trades. This is fascinating. One trader will say, the market took me out again. Another trader will say, I placed my stop in the wrong place. Same trade, same result, completely different language. Now, you might think that that's just wording, but I don't think it is. Language tells me where responsibility lives. If every losing trade is the market's fault, there's nothing to improve. You've handed control to something you can't influence. But when somebody says, I think I managed that trade badly, now we've got something we can work with. Now we can ask why. Was the stop in the wrong place? Did they ignore their trade plan? Were they trading during volatile news? Did they rush the entry? That's very productive. And one thing I've learned over the years is the traders who improve the fastest aren't the ones who lose the least. They're the ones who analyze themselves the most. Another thing I nearly always ask is, have you backtested your strategy? The answers usually fall into 3 groups. No, I've looked at a few charts, or yes. Then I'll ask, how many trades? Sometimes they say 50, sometimes 200, sometimes they say 500. But here's why I ask this question. I don't ask the question because I think everyone needs exactly the same number of trades to prove their system. I ask the question because I want to understand where their confidence in their system comes from. That's going to be the most important thing in your trading, confidence to trade it consistently, even when you're going through the drawdowns. And also, people need to be sure about their rules. We have a 6-second rule. If I ask you a question about your system, where do you get in? Where does your stop loss go? Where do your targets go? What makes that a valid entry? If you can't answer those questions in 6 seconds or less, then you've probably not tested your system or you don't know it well enough. So you're just hoping and praying. And confidence that's built on hope and praying disappears very, very quickly in trading. But confidence built on evidence is much, much harder to get rid of. Imagine 2 traders. Both lose 4 trades in a row. One immediately starts questioning everything, and the other one shrugs and says, my testing showed me this would happen. This is normal. Same losing streak. And it's the same losing streak, but 2 completely different reactions. And that's the difference between having confidence and not having confidence. And the difference was evidence. Evidence changes everything in your trading. So backtest. Something else I've noticed is the traders who eventually become profitable don't seem obsessed with finding certainty. In fact, they seem surprisingly comfortable not knowing. And I know that sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? But people often come into trading believing their job is to predict the market. It really isn't. Your job is to make good decisions with incomplete information based on probabilities. Think about a poker player. They don't know which card's coming next. They make decisions based on probabilities, and trading's exactly the same. The trader who struggles keeps asking, but how do I know? And the traders who improve ask, what's the probability? A very subtle difference, but it's a very important one. Here's another observation. I can usually tell quite quickly how somebody feels about boredom. And that might sound like a bit of an odd thing to say, but hear me out a minute. People often imagine profitable trading as exciting. Charts moving everywhere, constant action, big wins, adrenaline, but the reality is it's much quieter. Most consistently profitable traders that I know spend far more time waiting than trading. That's why I always say patience pays the bills. They're happy doing nothing. They're comfortable skipping setups that don't meet their rules. They don't need action. Now, when you compare that to somebody who opens the charts every morning thinking, I hope I find something today, that's very dangerous. Because once you're looking for action, you usually find it, whether it's there or not. You can talk yourself in or out of a million different trades at once on any given moment, in any given market. One of the hardest lessons in trading is learning that doing nothing is often the highest quality decision that's available to you. Waiting is not wasting time. Write that down. Waiting's just part of the strategy. One conversation I've had with hundreds of traders goes something like this. Jason, I think my strategy's stopped working. So I then ask, well, how many trades have you taken? 7, maybe 12, sometimes 20. Let's think about that. Imagine flipping a coin. Heads should come up roughly 50% of the time. But then flip it 10 times, you might get 7 heads or 8 tails. Would you conclude the coin is broken at that point? Of course you wouldn't. You'd conclude that you haven't collected enough data. Yet traders do that every day. Exactly that. A handful of losses, suddenly the strategy's abandoned. The indicators are changed, the rules are adjusted, you go and search the next guru, everything starts again. One thing I've learned is this. Good traders don't panic every time the data wobbles. They understand the difference between a bad trade and a bad sample. And another thing I've noticed has nothing to do with trading really, and it's curiosity. The traders who improve always seem very, very curious. They don't just ask what happened, they ask, why? Why did price react there? Why did that trade work? Why didn't mine? Why does this strategy suit this market? Why does it struggle here? Curiosity slows people down. It stops them from jumping to conclusions and helps them optimize and learn. So slowing down and curiosity is usually a very, very good thing in trading. The market will punish you if you're just making assumptions very, very quickly. I'll leave you with one final observation now, and that is that the traders who eventually become consistently profitable don't suddenly become different people overnight. There isn't a magical breakthrough. There isn't one perfect strategy. There isn't like a seminar that changes everything. What usually happens is far less dramatic. They gradually stop making the same mistakes. They stop changing strategies every month. They stop chasing certainty, stop risking too much, stop blaming the market. They stop looking for shortcuts, and they start behaving more like professionals because the experience has slowly taught them that consistency comes from repeating good decisions over and over again, not from finding clever ones. So if you've watched this video hoping that I'd tell you whether or not you're going to become a profitable trader, I'm afraid I can't do that, but I can tell you this. Every behavior that we've talked about in this video today is within your control. The questions you ask, the way that you review your trades, how much responsibility you take, whether you gather evidence before making decisions, whether you rush, whether you slow down, the choices you add up. And after coaching traders for more than 10 years now, I've become convinced that those small choices matter far more than finding the next great strategy. So if you can get those right, you'll give yourself a genuine chance of becoming the trader that you want to be. And if you find anyone that tries to disagree with the information that I've given you in this video, send them my way. We'll have a little conversation. So I hope that's helpful. If you want to get into trading the professional way and you want to learn and be coached by professionals every day, I highly recommend you check out tier1trading.com. Or if you want to stick around on this channel, be sure to subscribe and make sure you go and watch this next video that I'm going to put up here in just a second. And until next time, take care, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you then.